My name is Melissa Luckman. I'm the director of the Toro Law Center Disaster Relief Clinic, and we are going to host a Sandy Recovery Through Educational Forum this evening. We're going to cover a variety of topics from New York Rising to contractor disputes, how you can find assistance with your architect, and various other issues. We're going to touch on flood insurance, and we're really just going to have a full-packed educational evening. We're going to ask that any questions that you have, just wait until the end of the presentation, and we will be available. So first, I would like to introduce Michael Rabb, who is going to touch on stress reduction and emotional well-being.
Thank you, Melissa. Hello, and welcome to Toro Law School and to the Sandy Recovery Educational Forum. My name is Michael Rabb, and for the last 4.5 years, I have been the Hurricane Sandy Recovery Liaison for Nassau County. And as such, my process is such that I share with many of the people that are now Hurricane Sandy survivors. The reason I say this is that on October 29, 2012, I too was a resident of the village of Freeport. My home was on the water, and that evening my house basically got flooded by 6 feet of water, and also entailed the wave action that knocked my house off the foundation. And unfortunately, I did not have personal property insurance. All I had was insurance. So I, like many of you, have gone through the true stresses of Hurricane Sandy recovery. The first topic that we want to bring up here is the fact that no matter what we've all gone through, and no matter what we have in front of us, the most important thing we can do is be mentally healthy to face our stresses. We have lost our homes, we have lost our businesses, we have lost memories, we have dealt with family members that have come and gone through illnesses as a result of this. The stresses that our families have faced have gone everything from financial, from foreclosure, whether it be increased housing expenses, all the way to things as substance abuse and marital and family challenges and issues. So what I would like to be able to do is to first say, you must face your personal stresses, whether it be through personal psychological counseling, whether it be as an opportunity to reach out to friends and neighbors that have been going through this. We need that opportunity to move ourselves forward. Catholic Charities, which is an organization that has been funded by New York State, does offer a program called DART. DART is a free counseling program that allows counselors to either meet with you at home, or they'll meet with you in a common place, or you could actually go to their offices. The DART program is designed, and it's manned by people that are actually caseworkers experienced in Sandy recovery. So as you're speaking with them, not only will they be able to talk to you about their stresses and their challenges emotionally, but they might also have some very significant resources to help you move forward on your recovery. Later on in the program, we'll put up onto the screen the telephone number of DART so that you'll be able to reach out and contact them. Understand that many people are still in their cave. When there is a disaster, some people go out right away, they recover, they fix as if nothing was wrong. Then there are those people that follow along. But then there are those people who can't move. You could tell who they are because their houses haven't been touched yet. They're not moving ahead with talking to architects or reaching out to other people for help. A community has to help each other. So part of mental health is, please reach out to your neighbors, reach out to your friends, reach out to your relatives that might have been affected by Hurricane Sandy, and see what we could do to move them forward as well. So again, Catholic Charities does have the program. We will be putting up the DART phone number in a few moments. With that, we're going to move on to, hang on. Okay, we're having a little technical difficulty here. However, now that we have the mental part in your minds, and again, mental health does come first, you also need guidance. You cannot recover just on your own guessing. Do not be a homemade lawyer. Fortunately, New York State has funded Toro Law School and created the Toro Law Center in order to help people through the unbelievable legal challenges of recovery. So with that, I would like to take this opportunity and reintroduce Melissa Luckman, the director of Toro Law Center.
Good evening. So yes, I am Melissa Luckman. I'm the director of the Toro Law Center Disaster Relief Clinic. We are fortunate enough to be a state-funded program that provides all types of legal assistance to Hurricane Sandy survivors. What I want to talk about today are really the main issues that we're continuing to see and that we can provide legal assistance with. So our clinic, we've been around since just about 3 days after the storm. We started as a hotline and we've evolved into a full-service clinic. We've evolved into a full-service clinic that's able to provide assistance with the FEMA review, New York Rising, contractor disputes, and other types of legal issues that arose as a result of Sandy. The first area that we're consistently seeing and that I would like to talk about is the FEMA review process. For those of you who maybe are unaware of what this process is, in the wake of Superstorm Sandy, there were various allegations of fraud. There was a task force meeting attended by the senators of New York and New Jersey, and as a result, we had this FEMA review process. Now, this process has closed. You cannot enter into the process. However, if you have already entered and you still have an open and an active file, we are here to help you. Whether it be structure or contents, please contact our clinic and we will be able to guide you through that process. There's two parts to the FEMA review. There's a desk review completed by a FEMA in-house adjuster, as well as a third-party neutral portion, which is conducted by a third-party JAMS, who are typically judges, retired judges, and attorneys. And we are able to provide assistance with both areas of the FEMA review. What we ask in return is that you just provide us with the documentation so that we can do a full and complete file review so that we can direct you in the proper direction for your file and give you accurate information regarding the additional funds that you may be entitled to. The second area that we are constantly asked for assistance with is within the New York Rising program. Now, I think we need to understand we're 4.5 years out. New York Rising is maybe the imperfect, perfect program in various ways. What we need to do is troubleshoot these files. So if you're in repair, if you're in reconstruction, if you're in elevation, and if you have a question on your file, you have to contact the call center. That needs to be your first call. We'll get us caught up here. So you definitely need to reach out to the call center. I'm going to put the phone numbers up on the screen for you. So the first number is the regular call center for New York Rising. This is the number you're going to want to call if you want to speak with someone from the LERO team, that's the construction team. If you need to find out information regarding who your current case manager is, the current status of checks, maybe status of paperwork that's been submitted. The call center really is geared towards applicants in the program. They're very helpful to us as an organization, and they've been very helpful to homeowners as well. So 516-830-4949 is a great number to have. There's also the Farmingdale office, which we will get back on the screen for you in just a moment. Thank you. So if you have specific questions for your actual case manager, they're going to most likely be located in the Farmingdale New York Rising office. If you have a question for them, you're going to want to call the 631 number that's up on the screen in front of you. That's also the location where you can pick up checks, speak to somebody, and most likely have a meeting with New York Rising should you need one. The bottom number on this screen is very, very important. It's the contractor fraud hotline for the New York Rising program. You know, the number one hot topic right now is contractor fraud, and it's contractor fraud of stolen New York Rising funds. And why is that a problem? Well, as a homeowner, you enter into a grant agreement with New York Rising to complete a scope of work. You will not be able to close out your file with all these outstanding funds. The contractor fraud hotline is a great tool for you. So as soon as you start having issues with a contractor, don't be scared that they're not going to return. Don't be scared that they will do something in retaliation. You must contact the New York Rising contractor fraud hotline, and that number is 844-330-0008. And this is also available, I mean, if you look online and in all the recent Newsday articles as well, this number has been advertised very well. With regard to New York Rising deadlines, another hot topic that's made the news lately. Unfortunately, the New York Rising program is funded by federal disaster dollars. And what that means is eventually this program will need to start closing down. These deadlines are not there to hurt you, they're there to help you. You need to be aware of them. If for some reason you will be unable to make these deadlines, contact your case manager, contact the call center, put it in writing. Email your case manager, send a letter to the New York Rising office, and they will work with you. We recently had a great meeting with the governor's office, and they made it extremely clear that they want to work with homeowners through this process. They are not looking to leave people behind, but there needs to be constant communication between the homeowners and the case managers. With regard to New York Rising hardships, clarifications, or appeals, these are the most common questions that we've been asked recently. Many homeowners have contacted us regarding a scope review certification, or they're being told that a 6100 form must be completed in order to change the scope of work on their file. If you receive this form, you must check in with your design professional. If for some reason you were unable to get in touch with them, call your New York Rising case manager and let them know. This is a form that must be completed if it's sent to you. So make sure to have that done. Also, there's something called a receipt review certification. If homeowners submit receipts to the program may send you this form and ask you to attest to the fact that the receipts that you've provided are in fact from damage from Superstorm Sandy, Irene, or Lee, one of their covered events. As the homeowner, as the applicant who submitted these receipts, you must look through your report and attest to the fact that you provided those receipts for that reimbursement or for that increased value of item that you have received. Unfortunately, many of our homeowners have contacted us with 0 DOB tables, and those are homeowners who are currently in recapture. There is a subset of New York Rising awards that were mailed to homeowners predominantly in late 2013 that did not have a completed duplication of benefits table. And as a result of that table being incomplete, checks were mailed out to homeowners without that full analysis being completed, which has now left them in recapture. If you are put into recapture, there is also a phone number on that form. Contact your reconciliation case manager. Make sure that you submit an appeal, submit documentation, submit proof of your damages. Many caseworkers have asked homeowners for their flood insurance adjustment reports so that they can complete an in-house offset. They're making sure to do a line-by-line analysis and remove any items that may have initially crossed over as a duplication of benefits. It's very important that you submit all this documentation to New York Rising to ensure that your recapture is completely terminated or reduced to the lowest amount possible. With regard to bulkhead awards, this is how the program stands right now. March 2017, should there be any changes, we will let everybody know. But as the bulkhead program sits right now, in order to qualify for reimbursement, you must have contracted for that bulkhead work within 1 year of the storm. It is not a completion within the 1 year. I just want to make sure that all applicants are aware of that. So if you entered into a contract to have your bulkhead repaired within 1 year of the applicable storm that you're applying for assistance for, you should be entitled to reimbursement. If for some reason your file gets kicked, you can contact us, you can contact the call center, and we'll be able to provide assistance. Bulkheads that are across the street. This is a predominant issue in the Lindenhurst area. We have the canals, as well as various other locations throughout Long Island. Unfortunately, right now, the program is not funding bulkheads that are across the street from your property. I understand that some homeowners may have received checks, had inspections done. New York Rising may have been previously aware of this fact, but as the program currently stands, unfortunately, bulkheads that are across the street from your residence are not covered under the program. After you've submitted a hardship, a clarification, or an appeal, if you do end up in repayment, The homeowners you still have one more opportunity to submit documentation to either spread that money out over a period of time, work out a payment plan, or potentially have that amount terminated based upon your financial status. It is extremely important for you to complete the hardship repayment form. It's very detailed, it's definitely time consuming, it is worth it, unless you would like to cut a check back to the New York Rising program. It's going to ask for your assets, your liabilities, proof of tax returns, proof of income. You want to make sure to supply New York Rising with a full and complete hardship form, so when they review your file, they can make an accurate determination and don't come back and ask you for additional information afterwards. With regard to the New York Rising Small Business Program, the contact phone number, if you're in reconciliation for this program, is up on the screen in front of you. It's 855-861-0153. One of the requirements, or the main requirement in order to qualify for small business funds from New York Rising, is that you must be open and operating or need New York Rising small business funds to open or continue operating. Any small business owners who receive that $10,000 advance and thereafter close down their business may in fact end up in recapture. So it's extremely important, if you are a small business owner, that you have documentation that go along with all of your expenses and that you provide it to the reconciliation or recapture team, whoever you were contacted by. The last topic I want to touch on is contractor disputes in the capacity that our clinic can provide assistance, and that is through consumer affairs. Unfortunately, our funding currently is through June 30th of next year. Many cases in litigation can go 3, 4 to 5 years and potentially longer. So we are unable to take on cases for litigation. However, you should be aware that you do have a right to go to small claims, district, or Supreme Court, depending on the value of your dispute, and file a claim against your contractor. The first recourse that our clinic typically takes, and what we're able to do throughout the expiration of our funding term, is seek the assistance of consumer affairs. Consumer affairs in both Nassau and Suffolk County have been a great asset to us. We've been able to have thousands of dollars returned to homeowners. It's just very dependent on one very important item. That contractor must still be licensed at the time that we submit that complaint to Consumer Affairs. Unfortunately, if that contractor has lost their license prior to the submission of a complaint to Consumer Affairs, they don't have any leverage over them anymore. There's unfortunately no assistance that Consumer Affairs can provide beyond referring that contractor potentially to the DA, which of course is always an option. It just won't result in the return of funds. So if any homeowners, applicants to any program, especially if you're in the New York Rising program, it's very important to be in touch with Consumer Affairs, know that your contractor is licensed, and even if not, still file a lawsuit, which could potentially result in a judgment and hopefully get some funds returned. So now I am going to hand the presentation over to Scott Primiano. He is incredible. He is a flood insurance agent and is going to talk about all things flood insurance that homeowners should know while in and out of their home while construction is taking place.
Hi, everyone. Braving the pre-storm to come out, huh? Awesome. I continue to get, this is now 4.5 years into the process, right? And I continue to get a lot of questions about how to insure our houses during our renovation or reconstruction process. I continue to get a lot of questions about what's happening with flood insurance. And no wonder, because flood insurance is changing by the minute. So I want to run through with you a portion of the presentation. I want to talk about builder's risk insurance, who needs it, why you need it, why your homeowner's coverage is not valid during a reconstruction or renovation process, and then what happens after you're done with both your flood insurance and your homeowner's insurance, okay? First, I want to thank Melissa and her Melissa's team, for being here for this 4.5 years. Everyone here has been working on your behalf for 4.5 years since the storm. And if you ask anybody north of Montauk or Highway or Merrick Road, they can't even remember that Sandy happened. And here we have a team of dedicated professionals who have hung in there with you, making sure everybody gets home. So I really appreciate the work you've done. Mike, Melissa, we haven't met. Nice to meet you. And Dan. Brian, sorry, not Dan. He answers to anything. Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's get rocking. I'll be quick. Okay, first of all, I have a lot of people who are starting the elevation process, who are considering it, and they call their insurance broker, and they say, what insurance do I need? And the broker says, well, you have homeowner's insurance, you're okay. And they're wrong. The broker is wrong when they tell a client that they have coverage. The coverage that is required for heavy renovation or reconstruction or elevation is very specific to the project and is not covered by a normal homeowner's policy. So the broker is saying that because the broker doesn't know any better. In spite of the fact that the broker is a licensed broker in the state of New York, I promise you the barriers to entry into our industry are indescribably low. So anybody can hang a shingle and start giving advice on insurance. It doesn't mean it's correct. So when you read, my broker said, and it seems to be counterintuitive, it probably is. It's probably not accurate. Builder's risk policies, I'll go through what they are. There's a lot of mystery. Because they're called builder's risk policies, people think, well, my builder should have one. Well, in fact, they're not sold to builders. They're sold to homeowners. And we'll talk about what's involved there. And finally, changes in your insurance program and in flood insurance going forward. What's it going to look like? What does the future hold? There's been a lot written about that lately. Most of it's hysteria. So, you may not be in good hands with your homeowner's insurance. If you are elevating, is anyone here elevating, considering it? Yes? Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, there could be somebody out there who's doing it, so we'll continue. First of all, the goal is to get into an environment where your insurance costs are absolutely minimal. And low insurance costs come with John and Kathy Fallon's house. This is their house. They've been elevated. They're in a flood zone, but they're well above BFE. Their home is new, so insurance companies like them, their insurance costs, homeowners insurance costs, and their flood insurance costs are absolutely minimal. It's as good as it gets. That's what you have waiting for you at the end of your project. To get there requires a little patience and participation in a process. Getting insurance and writing it correctly is a process. It's not an event. So you have to stay with it and be working with a broker or an agent who's willing to participate with you. Why don't they do that inherently? Because there's no money in it. Do you understand when a broker reduces your insurance expense, what are they also cutting? Their commission. And the commission on a flood policy and a homeowner's policy is maybe 10%. So they're already not getting paid. Now we're asking them to really not get paid. And that's why they're not terribly enthusiastic about it. Still, there's a higher calling and a higher mission at hand. Brokers or anybody who represents the insurance industry has to do this because our mission is to do the right thing in the right way for the right reason with the right people. It can't be about the money first, or it can't be about self-interest. Now, all too often, people representing our industry are in it for the wrong reasons, short-term transactions, and not in it to do the right thing. You have to find a broker or an agent who's willing to work with you to do what's in your best interest, with an understanding that their best interest will be served down the road. So, what about you if you're elevating, if your home is currently vacant, or if your house is being demolished or has been demolished? Where are you from an insurance perspective? If somebody's told you that your homeowner's policy is in effect, or if you're afraid to call Allstate or whoever you may be insured with to find out if your policy is still in effect, because you think if you don't say anything, they won't find out, and therefore, because I have a document that says I have insurance, I have coverage. Nothing could be further from the truth. Your policy, all policies contain a material change clause. That means that there's a significant alteration structurally or to the valuation of your home, your policy is no longer in effect. Policies contain a vacancy clause. When you elevate, you have to move out. Now, they will tell you it's 4 months or it's 3 months, but inevitably it's 6 months or more, often longer. Your policy, your homeowner's policy, does not cover a vacant dwelling. If it does cover a vacant dwelling, it's not covering your liability, it's covering the structure only, and it's not covering your personal belongings. Your policy definitely does not cover collapse while under construction. Has anyone heard of houses being, falling down during the course of elevation? It's happened. It happens. And it happens to the best of contractors. Stuff goes wrong. There was one in Long Beach, I think last week, right? That got blown in half. The house actually bent. Homeowners insurance definitely doesn't cover that. Does contractors insurance cover that? Yeah. But the process of getting that claim paid is, I promise you, worse than going through your flood insurance claim. So it's better to have yourself protected. Your policy doesn't cover earth movement. So if there's a shake and bake in our area and your house falls down, you're not covered. It may cover, like I said, some of your policies may cover physical damage if you don't say anything to them. Most do not. And your policy is, if your policy is a normal one, you are not covered. In spite of what you hear, you are not covered. So, what do we have to do instead? First, get your head out of the sand, and if you need to find out if you have coverage, call not your broker or agent, but call the insurance company, describe for them in specific detail what's happening to your house, whether you're elevating, reconstructing, what's going to occur, give them the timeline of events, tell them you'll be moving out, you'll be taking some stuff with you, you'll be leaving other stuff in the house, and ask them specifically if you have liability coverage, if you have property coverage, and if you have coverage for your personal belongings. If the answer to that is yes, get that in writing. And it doesn't have to be a fancy contract. Just get something on email that says coverage is afforded to you. If you don't do that, you will be in trouble and be terribly disappointed if something goes wrong. If they tell you you don't have coverage, which for most of you will be the case, you need a very specific policy based on your situation. If your home is vacant, you need a vacant dwelling policy. Real simple, not expensive, but you have to have it. And you have to have it because of a concept in insurance we call an attractive nuisance. Which houses do you think are the most likely to get broken into, to get burned down, to get vandalized? A house you live in with an ADT sign out in front, or a house that's boarded up and vacant? Of course, right? So common sense should dictate common practice, and the common practice is we get a vacant dwelling policy. Once you start renovating, elevating, or working on the house, you nix the vacant dwelling policy and you add a builder's risk policy. That covers your liability. It covers the structure while it's under construction for damage not caused by the contractor. See, the contractor's policy covers the contractor, and their liability, things they do wrong. It doesn't cover acts of God, it doesn't cover vandalism, and it doesn't cover things they're not responsible for. So if somebody hops the little secure construction fence, you know, the orange fence that they often put around a house, if somebody hops over that and decides your house would make a nice bonfire, is the contractor at fault? No, the contractor's not at fault. You're on the hook. And if you don't have a builder's risk policy, you're going to be responsible for the damage. If your neighbor comes over, and this is a true story, neighbor comes over because they remembered you kept a ladder in the shed and they wanted to borrow the ladder. And as they entered the property, they stepped in an open hole that was left because they were working on the sewer line connection, and they broke stuff. Who's responsible? Is that the contractor's fault? Who's the guy gonna sue? Everybody! Everybody. The biggest expense with the liability case, believe it or not, is not the end result. It's not the damages. It's the legal defense cost. It's astronomical. And whether he's at fault or not, the homeowner, he's still got to defend himself. And the cost of defense is covered by your liability policy. So why wouldn't you get one? You wouldn't get one because somebody told you, or you read it on Facebook, or somebody said you don't need it because the contractor said you didn't need it, or you read it somewhere else. Stop it. Common sense, common practice. So builder's risk, while work is being done on the house, vacant dwelling while it isn't. Now, if you're going to tear down your house and rebuild, there's no reason to insure the structure. All you need is a liability policy. That's it. In fact, if the structure, I don't know, goes away for some crazy reason and you didn't have to pay for demo costs, it's a plus, not a minus. Okay, so these policies exist. They're not astronomical, and what I explain to clients is at the end of the process, you end up actually ahead from an insurance cost standpoint. Here's what it looks like. So, when you shift back to a regular policy, your house is new, all of your equipment is new, it looks pretty, and if it isn't pretty, you must gussy it up. Don't forget, treat your house prior to an insurance inspection like you have it on the market for sale. Make sure the railings are up. Make sure the dogs are leashed. Make sure it looks nice. Insurance inspectors inspect with their eyes. So make it look pretty, and it is pretty. Anyway, your house is up, it's elevated, it's looking good. Your insurance costs drop considerably if you're with the right carrier. Now, a lot of people, when they're going through the building process, don't cancel their homeowner's policy, even though it's not covering anything, because they're afraid they won't be able to get another homeowner's policy. The brokers actually tell them, oh, look, I won't be able to find you anything. Keep this in effect. Now, why would a broker say that? Because a lot of them suck. A lot of them don't want to cancel the policy. They don't want to go through the process. They don't want to lose the account. So it's easier to tell you something you may not even check out, and that is keep your policy. It's only a few months, whatever. Nonsense. Cancel your policy, your homeowner's policy, as soon as you start the builder's risk policy, because you will be in demand when you're done. Narragansett will like you. They may even love you. U.S. Coastal, Cabrillo Coastal will embrace you. They only write homes that are elevated, and they write them anywhere. Long Beach, they write them, they love them. Only if you're elevated, new equipment, they will take you. So, don't buy the myth that you can't get placed. Allstate may not want you back, but we don't want Allstate back. Screw them. Anyway, so prepare yourself for inspection. Work your insurance program to make sure it's working for you. Check your valuations. Make sure you're insuring for replacement costs, not market value. That's another big mistake people make. It's not market value. It's between $200 and $263 a square foot, depending on your finishes, depending on what you've done. That's what you insure for. Get it?
Got it.
Good. Okay, keep calm, feel love. Let's talk about flood. The Homeowners Insurance Affordability Act, IFFIA, was passed to replace and amend the Biggert Waters Act. The Biggert Waters Act was the big scary bill that Congress passed without knowing it, that took back that forced all kinds of insurance rate increases overnight, destroyed the real estate market on the South Shore and in other coastal areas, and basically caused a horrible flood insurance environment for most people. It became unaffordable. Recognizing their mistake, it only took them a year to fix it. And their fix was the implementation of the Homeowners Flood Insurance Affordability Act, or HIFIA. HIFIA. It's designed to replace the Biggert Waters Act, and all it is a way to get homes up to full risk rating over time rather than overnight. Don't mistake it for something that is going to make the pain go away. It is not. It is just going to make the pain less significant in the moment. It's going to be spread out over the course of time. The goal is the same, to get homeowners to full risk rating. So, why the need for reform? This is really important. The homeowners flood insurance, National Flood Insurance Program, is not self-supporting through its own contributions. It is not. The frequency and severity of events, of flood events, have dramatically increased over the course of time, and there aren't enough policyholders left to support the program. That's why it's running at a deficit. That's why it will continue to run at a deficit. So these flood insurance increases are absolutely unavoidable. This is a lot of stuff about the Flood Insurance Affordability Act, what's been built into your rate. And the intent of this slide really is to point out that there are fees that didn't exist before, which are really back-end increases, rate increases. And they're going to continue to be present, and in fact, some may be added. The way flood insurance is rated is unique to every single house. On this map, this is a snapshot of a flood map, I've highlighted 3 different homes that you can throw a ball from 1 yard to the next to the next. They're that close. All 3 are in different flood zones. All 3 have different rating characteristics. No 2 flood policies are the same. So you can stop this comparing your policy to your neighbor or somebody on Facebook. This is a quick snapshot of some of my accounts on our book of business. You can see no 2 of them are paying the same rate. That's always going to be the case. So when you hear your neighbor is paying something more or less than you are, it doesn't pertain to your policy. Every policy is unique to your house. So here's what's happening to rates. Pre-firm policies are what they call subsidized. All that means is the house was built before there was a rate map, before there was a flood insurance program. That's all it means. Subsidy means we didn't know where to begin, so we started here and we're going to keep you there. That's all it means. So for pre-firm subsidized homes, you are going to be paying an 18% increase each year. Now 15% on the rate and 18% overall. The law says, the Homeowners and Flood Insurance Affordability Act says very specifically, your rate increase cannot exceed 18%. So there's a correcting factor in there. But the net result, after you add in the fees, is usually something more than that. The problem we're going to experience down the road is this compounds year after year after year after year. So each year that 18% is worth a little more or costing you a little more. That's going to continue until you remediate, elevate, or flood-proof, or until you hit actuarial rating or full risk rating. And to do that, to know what that number is, you have to have an elevation certificate. So 2 to 4 family, one big change is 2 family houses. You have that mother-in-law apartment or you have that little illegal in the garage. You are now a 2-family house. You are considered a business, and your HFIA surcharge is no longer $25. It goes up to $250. So for subsidized non-primary residents or homes that aren't elevated, you're going to be paying the $250 as well. Second homes are $250. For homes that are elevated, post-firm, Kathy and John Fallon's house, you're going to be paying a minimal amount of insurance for the rest of your days. That's because you have abided by all the Flood Insurance Affordability Act post-firm requirements. You're already full risk rated. The only increases you're going to get are inflationary. So, the real pain will come if your policy begins with an RL. If you are a repetitive loss property, you have not elevated and don't intend to elevate a flood proof, you're going to be hit with a 25% increase each and every year until you reach full risk rating, and that can be as high as $10,000, $12,000 a year. So you have to do something. You can take some countermeasures. You can increase your deductible. HFIA gave us the ability to increase the deductible to $10,000. If you have a mortgage, the bank will not allow you to do that. So here are your countermeasures. Make sure your house is rated and being written for the right amount. Maximum of $250,000. Some of you can write for less. There were very few $250,000 claims that were allowed. Make sure your community is participating in the floodplain management program and receiving a proper CRS discount. They can be as high as 20%. Actually, they can be as high as 40%. Consider higher deductibles, of course. Triple check the flood map and make sure your flood policy is rated correctly. Half of the ones we look at are rated incorrectly. Get an elevation certificate, at least to find out what your full risk rating will be. Flood proof. There are a lot of schemes and methods you can use to install flood vents in a crawl space, fill in a basement, and do some things that will make your house appear elevated even though it isn't. Elevate as practical and continue to work with your local representatives to monitor and manage this flood insurance process. That's your only way. Stay together, stay active, stay vocal, and I love you, and good night.
Scott, I must say that in the 4 years, I have not seen a more comprehensive presentation on flood insurance, and I thank you for that because the insight is memorialized, and I can hit rewind and watch it again. So thank you very much for that. The next topic that we're going to be talking about is the topic of contractor and design fraud. As Melissa brought up, one of the most popular topics that are now surfacing is this issue of fraud. Let me go back a little bit and say that right after Hurricane Sandy, the doors were being knocked at by people from all over the United States. When the hurricane happened, remember, 3 generations of us never experienced this type of devastation on Long Island. However, there was damage in Katrina, there was damage in other parts of the country, and there were legitimate experts that had some experience in the past, and in this case, these people are coming up to New York, some with very, very good intentions and experience, and others that saw a very, very vulnerable population and took advantage in some very, very bad times. What we want to do right now is to make sure that when you are selecting a contractor, you begin on the right foot. So whether this be here in Nassau County or here in Suffolk County versus Nassau County, or frankly, anywhere where there's a disaster, the first thing you want to think about of a kind of contractor is you want to check them out. It's not the person who knocks at the door and says, look, I happen to be in the area, I happen to have done your next door neighbor, and here I am to help you. First thing that you want to do is contact your local Department of Consumer Affairs. Why? You see, every single contractor that works on a home must be licensed by the county to which that work is being done. This is general contracting, house lifting, roofing. The only licenses that are not by county are plumbing and electrical. Plumbing and electrical, you must go back to your closer jurisdiction. If you're in an incorporated village, such as Freeport or Lindenhurst or Island Park, you would then be going to your incorporated village for permit, to find out, is that a person licensed for plumbing and or electric. But contracting will always be to the county. Nassau County Department of Consumer Affairs does and encourages people to file complaints, so does Suffolk County. What I have right now is the phone numbers for both Nassau as well as Suffolk County Consumer Affairs, so if you have a pen handy. The Consumer Affairs number for Nassau County is 516-571-2600. And for Suffolk County, it's area code 631-853-4600. Now, both counties have a very nicely set up website where you go to their Consumer Affairs and then click on Consumer Affairs Complaints, and right there you'd be able to download either the Nassau County or the Suffolk County complaint form. You must understand that in order for the counties to act on your behalf, they must have your complaint in writing. So the sooner you put that in writing and you get it to your department, the faster it gets investigated. Let me add to that. If you feel that you have a problem with a contractor, just imagine the fact that somebody else out there might also be having a problem with that very same contractor, but not as strong as you to prepare and send in a complaint letter. So by you submitting a complaint, you might actually be red flagging somebody that might in the future hurt somebody else. Look for the right contractor. How do we do that these days? Well, we know that we've got these different websites that you see on TV. Go to a website, 15 different people with Angie's List and these others. But the most important thing that you have to realize is that Hurricane Sandy recovery is a specialty. Not everybody knows how to lift a house. Not everybody knows how to design that kind of construction. You want architects that have gone to the training provided by New York Rising, so they know properly how the program works, what not only the deadlines are, but what are the components necessary in order to get you your maximum benefits from the program itself. On the same case, it's the contractors. There are contractors now that have experience in working with house lifting. You want to talk to your neighbors who had good experience. You want to be able to talk to experts. Your architects might know of a few contractors that have done good work. But no matter where you get that reference, it will always fall back on you for good diligence. You must still call a few of their customers and say, how did they do for you and your job? What went wrong and how did they fix it? Not just, is everything wonderful, because everything doesn't always go well. But you want to have dialogue with people to make sure that, in fact, that you're more comfortable stepping in. Before you step in to sign up a specific contractor, your architect is going to provide you with plans. You're going to have an approved 6100 form, which is a list of what is approved to be repaired. When you show that to your contractors, make sure they understand they are getting paid apples to apples. No fancy extras added in, no surprises at the end. This is the allowance. This is what you're going to get. Will you meet this budget and for how much? Get 2 or 3 contractor quotes. You're not necessarily qualified to go line by line item and see which contractor will end up being the best for you. Lean on your architect. Lean on your engineer. Talk to somebody who's gone through this before and make an educated decision. Also, you have to know when to run. There are people that have gotten involved with contractors, and for one excuse or the other, whether it be that there were delays or somebody made a mistake or one contractor lost some staff members and he's running short-handed, you know in your heart and your soul when something's going wrong. If you smell something's going wrong, start thinking about it. What can I do? Touch base with your architect and say, hey, my contractor is falling off schedule. I'm concerned about what type of work is being done. Watch those salespeople. They are making commissions knocking at your door. I want to sell you a foundation. I want to sell you house lifting. I want to sell you the new construction work. By the way, I also know a landscaper, so when you're all through, we'll throw in a couple of bushes at the end. Remember, a salesperson is motivated by commission of what they talk you into buying. In Nassau County as well as Suffolk County, you must be licensed as a salesperson. So make sure that when somebody comes to your house and they're negotiating on behalf of a company, ask them for identification. Ask them for their license to legally represent that company as far as getting price quotes and what have you. If the person is unlicensed, you have very little recourse, especially if the contractor themselves to whom you signed a contract with is not a licensed contractor. Well, your contract might stay in force, but you're not going to have the protection of the consumer affairs mechanism in case something goes wrong. There's an old saying, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. There are no bargains out there, ladies and gentlemen. Do your due diligence. And with that, let me say one other thing. You are receiving money as a federal grant. This is a gift. But you are now responsible for the proper and responsible spending of that money. No going out and buying cars, no paying off college loans, no going on special vacations, no getting rid of the credit cards. This money is given to you for a very, very specific purpose. It's our tax money. Each and every one of you in this country is financing this. You as a homeowner have an ultimate obligation and responsibility to make sure that your accounting is crossing T's and dotting I's. Don't come back to a grant. Don't come back to a legal aid. Don't come back to your architect and say, well, I spent it on this. That is your responsibility as a responsible individual to make sure that you are taking government money and spending it correctly. That's why there are fraud situations out there that might even be recipients of the New York Rising funding. We also know that fraud is bigger than just a consumer affairs issue. There are contractors out there to this day that are taking deposits and disappearing. Well, I want you to know that it's not just the Nassau County and Suffolk County Consumer Affairs. They have very active departments of district attorney departments, but also you have the Office of the New York State Attorney General, you have the Federal Trade Commission, you have the FBI, you have HUD, you have EPA, you have DEC, and there's other organizations of federal investigators. Make sure you understand that when you sign for that grant, you are responsible not only for that money, but the proper reporting of that money. No creating fake invoices just to pad your bill. This program will be audited, and you have the ultimate obligation to make sure that is organized correctly. There are people, however, that are very afraid of making a consumer complaint. I want you to know that myself as the liaison for Nassau County, but also for those that are not in Nassau versus Suffolk, pick up the phone and just call Consumer Affairs. If you don't want to give your name, at least give them some information to which they might be able to do some research. But understand, it's hearsay unless you have it in writing with documentation. And pictures, by the way, are 1,000 words. The next topic that we're going to go over, I would like to take this opportunity and introduce Brian Baer from the Elevated Studios. Because as I said again, how you deal with those contractors and architects is such a delicate line that the relationship between the homeowner, the architect professional, and contractor is so important that Brian is going to bring that to you as a very specific topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. I am a licensed architect here in New York as well as other jurisdictions around the country. And what I want to talk about specifically tonight is the relationship between you, the homeowner, your architect or engineer, the contractor, the building department, and then ultimately New York Rising, which is the program. Our responsibility as architects is to guide you in your process from start to finish. It's a collaborative process. It is not one where we should be working remotely. It is one where we should be working hand in hand with you, the homeowner, with the contractor, with the jurisdiction, and especially with the program who is providing you with this free money, this grant, to help you through your recovery. It is a partnership, so keep that in mind as you are moving through your recovery. You have to put in just as much information as we take out, and we have to give you as much information as you need in order to make your recovery whole. That relationship starts obviously between you, the homeowner, and GOSER, the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery. They are affectionately known as New York Rising, and they are the folks who are responsible for administering the grant, the dollars that are going to get you through your recovery. There are requirements, there are responsibilities that you have, and you must abide by them, we must abide by them, the contractors must abide by them. If not, none of us may be eligible for future funding should an event happen. Beyond that relationship, though, you also have a relationship with your architect or your engineer, your construction professionals, your general contractors, the subcontractors, as well as the jurisdiction. All of us work for you. Keep that in mind as you start your process and end your process, that we all work for you. And if you have questions, ask them. We're here to help. At the end of the day, we are here to help. We want to make sure that you have enough information so that you can make an executive decision and a clear decision about your recovery. And not every recovery for every person is the same. As Scott mentioned, right next door to one another, you could throw a baseball between 3 properties, and each and every one of those properties may have a very different recovery, even though they're right next to one another. One may have had their entire house fall off the foundation, and the other one right next door to them may have only had a couple of windows blown out, when the one after that may have only had a few roofing tiles blown off. So keep in mind as you're working through that. Under normal circumstances, design and construction can be a somewhat stressful process. You're trying to expend your wishes to your design professional, and they're going to take your ideas and your wishes and put it on paper, and then they're going to hand it to a contractor, and that contractor is going to build it. They're going to build the thing. But now you throw disaster in the mix of it, and it becomes more stressful, because not only did you have your home damaged, but yourself may have been damaged. You may have lost all of your belongings. You may have lost everything. You may have lost a loved one. And so throw that stress into a construction project, and it becomes at times hopeless. But we have some words of wisdom at the end of this that'll get us all through that. Many of our design and construction professionals, this is really the first storm that they've ever seen. Actually the first major storm. I can remember coming up on an Amtrak train many, many moons ago when Gloria reared her ugly head back in 1985. But we're educating more and more people, and we're getting there, right? The contractors are learning how to build resiliently. The design professionals are learning how to design resiliently. So it's becoming an ever-ending process. And we're getting there, which is the important thing. Building codes, which is the law of the land in design and construction land, is everything that we base our design decisions upon. A lot of people may say, well, I want a basement. Well, you can't have a basement because basements don't exist anymore in coastal communities, right? We can't have that playroom downstairs anymore with the little disco ball. It doesn't exist, right? So what can we do now? Well, and why do building codes change? Well, they change usually in a significant manner after a disaster, fire, flood, wind, tornado, earthquake, or a man-made event such as what happened in 9/11. And it's usually due to a catastrophic loss of life or property, or sometimes both. So 9/11, codes change in New York City. Sandy happened, codes change in all throughout New York State. And it takes time. All of this process takes time. It takes time for you to give us your ideas. It takes time for us to put those ideas down on paper and show you the pretty pictures and show the contractor the not so pretty pictures. And in a good time, in a good sense, without any government interference, that process could take about 6 to 9 months to do the design, and then an equal amount of time to do the construction. Now you throw the government involved, such as the program, and whether that program is New York Rising or Build It Back if you're in the city, or REM if you're out in New Jersey. And now you're adding 2 to 5 months to the process because they have to review the design drawings and the 6100 to make sure that our solutions can be funded. And at the end of the day, that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for fundable projects so that we can all be resilient within our own communities. So design, 2 to 4 months. Bidding and negotiation is the time that it takes us to bid a project to the contracting market. Usually takes about a month to permit a set of drawings, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit shorter. It depends on the jurisdiction, how busy they are. And then construction administration is about 4 to 9 months. And that's the time that we as design professionals spend in the field looking at the work to make sure that tab A is going into slot B. I want to share one anecdotal story about construction observation and why it's so important for architects and owners to make sure that they are working together during construction observation. We were brought in at the end of a project for a lovely woman on the South Shore who had her home damaged not just by Sandy but also by Irene and Lee. So she was a triple damaged house. Contractor did all the work, elevated, brand new foundation, put the beams and whatnot in, and she calls us in to help her close out the project because the architect did not have a construction observation agreement in place with the homeowner. And lo and behold, the beams that support the house are resting on the column, the series of columns that are now supporting the house, right? And but there's no physical connection. There's no mechanical connection between the beams and the columns. What's holding everything in place is Sir Isaac Newton, gravity, right? Now here's the kicker. The jurisdiction signed off on it and actually gave a certificate of completion. So we come in after the fact and take a gajillion photos and show the jurisdiction something's missing, like all of the connections. And the good story is that the homeowner is now going to have those connections brought in by the contractor at no charge to the homeowner. She didn't really understand what the benefit of all that was, and she's in the medical profession, so I put it in context. I said, you have joints, right? You have knees, you have elbows, you have thumbs. What holds all of those joints together? And she answered, cartilage and tendons and sinew and all that other good stuff. I said, well, picture that joint without that stuff, and you've got bone on bone. So that's what you currently have in your home, right? It's bone on bone, which kind of isn't good. Anyway, Good story, happy ending, we're good to go, right? Our job, though, as architects during construction is to observe. It's not to inspect. We want to make sure, again, that tab A is going into slot B, and we leave the inspection for the inspectors, the jurisdiction, the building inspectors, whether it's city, village, township. It's their job to inspect. It's their job to make sure that the contractor is doing their job. We're there to make sure that the contractor who has any questions, we can answer them. If we need to make a change in the field because some of the work that we're doing is existing conditions and elevating an existing home and dropping it down on a new foundation. And sometimes, we come up with a solution, we put it on paper, but it doesn't always work out. So we have to do a little sketch on the fly and resolve it in the field. Remember, we're here to help. So if you have a question about what's going on, ask it. And if you can't understand the answer that we provide you, ask it again. And keep asking it until you get the answer that you feel comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, it's your home. After our time, whether it's a year or 2 years doing design and construction, we're done. And unless you invite us for Thanksgiving dinner, we're not really going to be coming back to your house. And, we're always up for a party, but in all likelihood, we're not going to be coming back. So we want to make sure that at the end of the day, you are happy. So ask those questions. On the right side of the screen is a laundry list of things that contractors do and don't do. And at the bottom of that is a website, the National Association of Home Builders, NAHB.org. You can go there, you can find out how to select a contractor, the good questions to ask, the not so good questions to ask. On the left side is all about architects. We are your advocate. We know how to speak constructionese, which is a language all unto itself. We go to school for that. So we want to make sure that you understand what it is that you're getting. And again, the value of an architect, AIA.org, the American Institute of Architects, they have a laundry list of questions that you can ask us. And the one thing that you want to find out, and Mike mentioned this before, ask for not just good references, but not so good references. Because you never know where a relationship went south. It might not necessarily be the contractor's fault or the architect's fault. It could be the homeowner. It could be that the homeowner is overly demanding, doesn't understand what they want, doesn't know how to communicate it well, and similarly, the architect or the contractor may not also be able to communicate it well. So you want to make sure that you ask for both good and not so good references. A couple of the programs that are still very, very active here within New York Rising, hazardous material abatement, where the program will hire a contractor and do the abatement themselves so that you don't have to go out and file all of the paperwork. The repair construction services, and these are usually for projects that are under $50,000 in repair. The other program is the elevation construction services, where they will actually hire an architect and a contractor and elevate your home for you. And this comes into play if you're optional or mandatory elevation. And then there's the Recon 100 program, which is taking some homes that have been identified all throughout Long Island as well as upstate New York that were affected by the various storms. And they have to meet a certain criteria. So there's a low AA, meaning that they didn't do a lot of work. There's a high ECR, meaning that there's a lot of work to be done. It's greater than 75% substantially damaged, and the homeowner has it falls into the low to moderate income category. What they will do is they will hire an architect, like us, hire a contractor, and design and build you a new home so that really all you have to do is tell us how many bedrooms you had, how many bathrooms you had, the square footage. We'll come up with the designs and we'll build it for you. And we have a very finite amount of time to design that. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about specifically home elevation and accessibility. And I think at the end of this, if we have time for after questions and answers, we can run that movie. The program itself has a specific way of helping those individuals who lived in homes pre-Sandy who have a functional need. They allow for a certain amount of dollars for either a ramp or a vertical wheelchair lift or bathroom upgrades. And the ideal is a letter of medical necessity, right? So it's not on a prescription pad, it's from your primary care physician, and it must be a letter on their letterhead, right? And it's your current MD. It must include your name, your age, your date of birth, how long you have been under their care, and specifically what are the ailments that you are being treated for. In red, bold, italicized, well, not italicized, but bold and red, the words medically necessary must be on this letter. Period. The end. It gets submitted to your design professional submits it to the program. The program has a committee, demonstrable hardship committee, and it gets funded. They allow for $3,500 per vertical foot for a ramp up to 4 feet, and then anything 5 feet and above, they fund a vertical wheelchair lift worth about $22,000. It is not a duplication of an award, it is included within your award. So whatever your award cap is, whether it's 300, 350, or 400, that portion of the award for functional need is within that. So it's not going to, if you have a cap of 300, it's not going to bump you to 322. Now I want to turn it back to Michael, who's going to talk a little bit about budget management, specifically about your recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. It seems that each and every time I come up, I'm dealing with things that I almost reflect back in my own experiences. And budget management in time of disaster is a tremendous challenge. In many cases, your family has lost some income as a result of the storm. Sometimes you have to replace things that were not insured, so you have additional immediate expenses as well as long-term expenses in case you had to refinance to get additional funding. But the cash that actually comes from New York Rising in and in itself must be treated as if it's its own complete entity. Once New York Rising your architect submitted to New York Rising a budget, you're getting a home that's defined basically as repair to a level of vanilla. You are not entitled to Corian countertops. You're not entitled to a Whirlpool bath hot tub where you only had a small little American Standard tub before. New York Rising is designed to bring people back into your home, period. So the first thing is, when you're dealing with your architect, make sure that what's on the 6100 in the column, what the grant is going to pay, is agreed between you and your architect and your contractors. If there's any extra special work to be done, make sure that it is on a separate budget, a separate understanding, and that's money that is not being written out of your New York Rising funding. So how do we do that? The first thing we do is we open a brand new checking account with the first check that comes from New York Rising. Whether you want to use your own bank, this is a nice time to try out a new bank, but make sure you open an account. And by the way, most banks today, with that type of a deposit, you're getting free checking. So don't even worry about that. Simply ask for a checkbook that has both the original check as well as a tissue copy behind it. This way, into the future, as you write checks, you will always have a tissue copy to prove exactly what you wrote by penmanship onto that check. When you receive the check from New York Rising, open the account, start a spreadsheet, whether it be a piece of paper, like the old accounting paper, or whether if you're computer literate to use Microsoft Excel. Start with the money that you just got deposited into the account. This way, each and every time you write a check, you're going to be able to deduct out who you wrote it to, what the amount is, the date, and perhaps even in the invoice number and a description of what that check was for, and then reduce it off your balance so you know how much more you have left to your budget. Always making sure that when you write out your check, you never write out a check because somebody called you and said, mail me money. You turn to your architect, you turn to your contractor, you turn to your house lifter, you turn to each and every one of them and say, no check without an invoice in writing. And making sure that that invoice matches up exactly to the allowed budget within your New York Rising account. And that is something that you need to discuss with your architect and contractor before the work begins. You want to know what are the program timings. Do I make a check every week? Do I make a check every 3 weeks? Are there benchmarks as far as what construction gets taken place? Have this conversation with your architect and your contractors. On your check, you're going to write the name of the contractor, the date, and the amount. And in the bottom left-hand corner in that memo, you're going to put the contractor's invoice number. And you're going to write on there, payment for invoice number so-and-so, right on the check in itself. You also want to open up an account that does have access to the internet online. You will never write a check online. You will never wire transfer money online. You just want the access online so that each and every day or every other day, you sign on to simply make sure what checks you wrote were cleared and cashed. That's all it is, so you can instantly reconcile your account. Again, remembering that your money, it's now your money with a guarantee back to New York Rising. If everything goes well and there's a closeout, those funds became yours. There's also another old rumor that I'm going to dispel right now for some of you. If you complete New York Rising and you close out, you do not have to stay in your house for 3 or 5 years. That is a very old guarantee. It is over. Once you close out New York Rising, your house is yours to do that which you want, keep it, sell it, rent it, whatever you want. But it is so important that you make sure that you keep an eye on your money. Because let me tell you right here and right now, if you can't prove how you spent it, if you can't prove that you have proper expenditures, New York Rising is going to come back to you and ask you for that money, and they're going to put a lien on your house, and you're not going to sleep at night. It is so important that from day one, you write your checks exactly for what it's for, and don't think of yourself as treating yourself to a luxury, because if you spend it on something else, you're going to give yourself a headache at the end. Now, there are those people who did not make the New York Rising program for whatever the many reasons that can there be out there, and that could be both the reasons for the program not promoting it to certain groups, or whether the certain groups weren't opening their mail. That is a fait accompli. There are people, however, who can truly benefit still by elevating their home in order to save flood insurance. But they don't have the same benefit of a grant to help them do that. They will now have their own choice whether to privately fund the elevation of their house. Because if you don't lift your house, you're going to be paying flood insurance like this. Well, there's a certain point in life where if you pay this insurance for so long, if you look backwards, you would have said, wow, if I lifted my house and took a loan out for it, that loan payment might actually be cheaper than all the years of extra flood insurance payments. So with that, I'd like to bring up JP Muniz. JP is going to be talking this evening regarding home loans. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having us today. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody. There's a couple of important reasons that you will benefit from a rehabilitation loan, whether it be a Fannie Mae home style loan or a 203K loan, which have very big differences. The major ones being the amount that it will cost you to have that type of loan. Most importantly, though, you don't need to have the home in livable condition. So if you've run out of funds after the fact, after you've started some of the repairs, it'll be okay. It doesn't require an appraisal of an inhabitable home like most refinances do, a cash out, for example. So a lot of folks that were in a situation where they ran out of funds saw themselves going to the neighborhood bank and asking, what is the possibility of me to take some money out and finish the repairs? Some folks made it as far as an appraisal, only to be denied for money because the home wasn't inhabitable. Either the work was not completed or it just wasn't in a situation that could have been finalized. With these type of refinances, you don't need to have the home habitable. It could be that you want to make it your dream home. It could be that you want to raise it. It could be that you want to add an elevator. There's a lot of different opportunities that you could have. Now, the restrictions are going to be pretty simple. You can't exceed the county limits set by HUD, Fannie Mae, which is a government-sponsored enterprise. The financing options for a refinance are going to be 97.75% of the home's improved value, which is a very big deal. There's going to be an appraisal done to value the property as it stands and to value the property after your improvements. There's a calculation that goes on which is going to include the value after improvements and the current value. 97.75% is the amount that you could finance for a 203K loan, which is through HUD. Now, besides a 203K loan, there's going to be the option of doing a Fannie Mae home-style loan. A Fannie Mae home-style loan has the benefit of not requiring private mortgage insurance. So where a 203K loan is through HUD, FHA, and requires private mortgage insurance and upfront mortgage insurance, which could be a deterrent to some folks who don't have an equity issue, they just have an issue of not having the funds available to complete the job. Fannie Mae has the same exact option without the upfront mortgage insurance premium and without the monthly insurance premium, which equates to private mortgage insurance. Now, the limitation of a Fannie Mae home-style loan is going to be that you're allowed to finance 50% of the improvement value. So if the home requires $50,000 in repairs, the improvement value would have to be equal to $100,000. That is a big limitation that might put us back to an FHA loan. But it's important that you know what's out there, and when you go to your local bank, if you do see a benefit in any of these type of loans or can't find the funds to complete the work, it's important that you know these two things, Fannie Mae home-style and FHA 203K, and you understand the difference between the two. Your local bank may not do one over the other simply because they don't see enough traffic of these type of loans. So it's important that as you're looking for costs and rates, you also consider that there's different banks that offer different products just because of the flow of work that comes through. Now, the importance of understanding the two, besides the fact that you could only do 50% of the improved value on a Fannie Mae loan, is the type of properties that you could do it for. Fannie Mae will allow you to rehabilitate your second home, your investment property, where FHA won't. FHA will consider at certain circumstances 110% of the after improved value, where Fannie Mae will only go to 95%. The other things to consider are luxury items can't be included. So a pool or an elevator, if you're not handicapped, those are things that are considered luxury items. So back to the main point, it's important that you understand that what's available to you. It's important that you make it out to your local bank and you do ask about these two options, but they are great options. If there's any questions, we will be available afterwards. Thank you guys. Thank you, Michael, for having us, and thank you all for being part of the program.
We've gone through a terrible ordeal over the last 4.5 years. This is a challenge that continues to the rest of our community today and into the future. This evening happens to be a very unique evening because Hurricane Sandy is behind us, but this evening we also have a blizzard warning out in the New York, Long Island area. The reason I bring that up is because just whether it be a storm, whether it be a blizzard, whether it be a flood, disasters come. And if the communities are not prepared, if we don't think not only about today, but if we don't think about tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, Long Island is doomed in its real estate values along the South Shore. My fear is that as you start looking at the typography of homes on the South Shore affected by Hurricane Sandy, you are going to be seeing slowly the rise of some homes and the remaining staying on the ground of others. And your communities are going to start looking like big teeth and little teeth. Unless this community comes together with some very, very strong and very significant future planning, whether it be road elevation, whether it be infrastructure protection, or planning at home, our land has now got to be focused in on the future, resiliency, preparedness, and what we refer to as pro-covery. I'd like to bring Brian Baer back up, and he'll be talking to us about that topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I can't take too much credit for the term pro-covery. That comes from my friend Richard Vernon from Salvation Army, who I think over a pint or two we kind of came up with that. But in any event, I want to talk to you in closing about moving forward, right? So re is one of those suffix or prefixes, get my English right, that's looking backwards. We want to talk about pre or pro, looking forward. So, you know, as architects, we see beautiful places, regardless of whether it's a blank sheet of paper or, unfortunately, what one of our clients on the Shinnecock Nation saw, a 36-inch tree fall on his house, and this is what's left. But we're starting from scratch, right? We're seeing that beautiful place. We're envisioning what can happen. But fortunately, or not, you know, people are still infatuated with the coastline, right? So we're here, we live, well, not you, but, well, actually you, yeah, some of us live on Long Island, and it's long and it's an island, right? It's surrounded by water. I don't. I live farther north. But it's a relationship with the coast, and we're not moving away from the coast, we're actually moving closer to the coast. And as the world becomes more and more dense, more and more people are moving and still building coastlines, right? So it's not the pizza box on the chopsticks, like what you might see out in California. It's really this relationship. So it's on Staten Island, which is the picture on the right. Or it's the picture on the left, which is could really be anywhere, right? It could be here in Long Beach, it could be here in Mastic, but actually this image is in the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans. But it's that feeling, right? It's that modern look. It's that single-story or two-story structure up on pilotis or columns that you can get some parking underneath, and you park the car or the bikes or the canoes, and you live, right? A lot of people that we're designing homes for nowadays are utilizing that space for outdoor living space. It's that lanai, right? To use that Hawaiian term. Especially in the West End and Long Beach, where space is at a premium, you get that captured space that's really, really becoming these gems, these different communal spaces as a community. This could also be a different type of relationship, right? So here in Massapequa, which is where these two photos are taken, you have one option, which is that closed foundation, which has some automatic flood vents in it. And then you have an open foundation, which doesn't have any flood vents. It's just open, right? So water flows in, water flows out. You park your boat, your jet ski, your car, your lanai, and you can have your thing, right? So that upper picture, right, Scott, we don't want to put people down there, right, because that's uninsurable. So keep that in mind. And actually, in the village of Freeport, they make you sign a non-conversion agreement, which says that we are only going to put cars and things in this space. We're not going to put people. Why? Because it's uninsurable and it's unsafe. Again, remember my talk a little bit earlier about the disco ball? That doesn't exist anymore. Well, I guess you can have it if you have the open foundation concept, and then you're inviting all of your neighbors for the block party. That we will definitely come for. Here in the Northeast, though, we have two very tangible things and one intangible thing that we're trying to overcome when we're talking about resilience. It's that aged-built environment. It's the aging in place population. It's the cradle to cradle population, right? So we're born in a house, we grow up in a house and we're dying in that same house, right? And then we're passing that same house on to our children, right? So it's going on and on and on. And then because, those are the tangible things. And then because we're New Yorkers, right? I want what I want. And I'm gonna get what I want because, well, I'm a New Yorker. Well, sort of, right? Why is this important? Well, in 1983 was the first time that flood control construction was put in the building code. And why is that important? Well, 84% of all of the homes within the flood zone within New York City, we're talking about the 5 boroughs, were damaged by Sandy, 84%. And that number in Long Island is about the same, maybe a little bit north of that. 98% of the red tagged homes or buildings destroyed within the 5 boroughs in the flood zone were built before 1983. Well, why is that important? Well, because the codes have changed, right? So again, that code changing thing that I talked about earlier. Now the image on the upper left-hand corner, that is taken of 2 homes in Seaford on a canal. The single-story structure was where the father lived, and the 2-story structure is where his daughter and her 2 children lived. Sandy comes, and that orange line that's running through there, that is where the water was. Now, what happened to that house, the yellow house, is back in 1990-something or other, I can't remember the exact date, they decided to put in spray foam insulation in that floor cavity. And what they didn't do was they didn't check the structural connection or the frequency of connections between the bottom sill plate and the foundation. So what they in fact created was a houseboat. So the 6 feet of water came, lifted the house up, moved it about 1.5 feet off, and then brought it back down once the waters receded. Now, the interesting thing is the family who was in the 2-story house on the 2nd floor watched all of this happen. Right? So they watched their house go up, move, come back down. Not unlike Dorothy and Oz, right? We don't want that to happen ever again because it's bad. The images on the bottom of the slide, that's Breezy Point, which is at the end of the Rockaway Peninsula, and part of the 150 or so homes that were torched. Because a couple of transformers decided to explode because of the seawater. We don't want this to happen again, ever again. Because we're working a lot in the Sandy catchment area, we've been working with well over 1,000 people in our time. We've asked people, what do they want? Well, we basically want to get back. We want to get back to our homes, right? We want to be safe. Occasionally, you know, they want security, right? Well, I think they all want security at the end of the day. They want to elevate their home. Sometimes they want more space. Sometimes they want a garage. They want a well-built home. They want a basement. We tell them no. We definitely help them if they have a functional need, so that accessibility, universal design aspect definitely comes into play. So we want to make sure that at the end of the day, the individuals and the families are back home. But we also want to make sure that the communities are back home, right? Because that's just how this all comes together. For every dollar spent doing recovery measures, it saves about 4, right? 10 years ago. Nowadays, it's about 1 in 7. So think about that. Think about the amount of money that you are getting. Forget about the money that you're getting in your grant. Think about the dollars lost to mucking out your house, to lost wages, to time spent trying to figure out what you're going to do. And now multiply that number by 7. So if we can avoid that in the future by making our homes and our communities and ourselves resilient and sustainable, think how much better off we're going to be. In the past, before Sandy, before Gloria, before Katrina, that upper row of houses, the monopoly houses, right? That's kind of where we were. Not really creating a resilient community. But now, today, what we're getting is that middle row, right? You get some houses that are up because people have made the decision. You get some houses that are down because people either haven't started yet or people haven't made that decision. We want to get to the bottom row where everybody is resilient. Now, it might not necessarily be that it's a fully enclosed foundation with flood vents and so on, or it's a fully open foundation with piers and whatnot, but at the end of the day, we want a community, and all of our communities, that could be affected by climate change, especially in a coastal community, that they are resilient. At the end of the day, though, we want to be smart about it, right? We want to be sustainable. We want to be mitigated. We want our homes to be adaptable to the ever-changing climate. Despite what people may say about climate, we have a great batting average against Mother Nature. It's .000. She will win every single time, no matter what we do. So what can we do? We can make our homes smart. We can make ourselves smart. We can make our communities smart. Resilient, and lastly, timeless. And it's that middle triangle, right? It's the sustainable. And one of the terms that I love to use in our office is sustain affordability, which is about 54 points on the Scrabble board, right? So if it's sustainable, it's affordable, and if it's affordable, it's sustainable. And it's not just economics, right? It's about our minds, it's about our bodies, it's about us as a people. And so we're talking about recovery, and it takes time, right? So there's a couple of little points that I want to give all of you. So not just the homeowners, but the design and construction professionals, and those of us who are working in recovery, both short-term and long-term. Be patient, right? Recovery takes time. While, again, we're New Yorkers and we want that instant gratification and we want to be done today, right? It takes time, especially when we have to go through the program's hoops of making sure that the round peg fits nicely in the round hole, right? It just takes time. Be patient. Be persistent. Ask those questions. Ask them again. If you don't understand it, ask it again. If you don't understand it a third time, ask it again of a different person. Ask all of us here that we're here tonight. We all have our contact information. If you don't want to talk to us and you want to talk to your case rep, talk to your case rep. But ask those questions constantly until you are comfortable with the answers that you're getting. And lastly, do not give up hope. We will get through this. We will get through this together. We will get through this wholly. We will make sure that we are resilient so that when the next one happens, because it won't be an if, it will be a when. It might not happen this year, it might not happen next year, but it will be a when. We are prepared. So with that, we see a beautiful place. I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for watching. You want to give a close?
Well, we're going to...
Melissa Luckman.
We're going to conclude the live part of our presentation, but we are going to attach a accessibility video, which is very, very important, provided by FEMA. So this will close out the live portion. We will be available for questions. I just want to urge everyone watching tonight, everyone who's here in the audience, everyone who has a friend or a family member that's still recovering from Sandy, the time is now. We're 4.5 years out. We need to get recovery moving, we need to get you moving forward, and we need to get you home. So whether you have a deadline you're running against, whether you're in the New York Rising program, FEMA review, whether you're dealing with a contractor or a design professional, be in constant communication with that person. Make sure you know your deadlines, you're abiding by deadlines, and we hope to assist the remaining survivors back to recovery and back home. So thank you very much, everybody.